Coming out tonight. We're really pleased to see you and excited to share the information that we've got to present to you guys. First off, I really would like to thank our sponsors, Kraft Hemp Company, Braddock Enterprises, Komorn Law, and of course, Advanced Nutrients, and my buddy Justin Pullen. Thank you again for coming out. We're going to have some delays. As I said, the traffic is putting a couple of our speakers behind. And unfortunately, this evening, Stephen Braddock, who is the owner of Braddock Enterprises, was unfortunately in an accident outside of Grand Rapids on his way here this evening, and just texted me that he was leaving the hospital, so he's in our prayers this evening. Please keep him in your thoughts. Representative Gay Dagnogo, who put forth a House resolution that was passed unanimously, will not be able to make it this evening. But I do have some speaking points that she asked me to share with you guys this evening. So when it's her space, I will be sharing those notes that she had just forwarded to us. However, to kick it off tonight properly, our primary sponsor, Mr. Michael Komorn, has some things that he'd like to share with everybody with this great new industry blossoming here in the state of Michigan. With that, Mr. Komorn.
Thank you, Jesse Riggs. And also I want to thank Dan over there. He's the spotlight guy. He likes being in the spotlight, and I want to point him out and put those together. He's responsible for the food also. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I do think it is very critical that those people that are interested in the hemp industry, that there be some level of organizing and bringing people together. And the concept that we're trying to promulgate here is one of a trade union where people can interact with one another and bring information to the community as it becomes known. A lot of exciting things happen in Michigan, particularly for hemp and the hemp industry. It's been seemingly quiet. I mean, I know those that are paying attention, seems quiet for hemp compared to the excitement of the recreational marijuana and the Licensing Facility Act, et cetera. But as we all know, I keep thinking of the new phone books are here. The new phone books are here, but it's the draft hemp rules were recently promulgated, which we've been waiting for a long time. And one of our speakers tonight, who I'll mention now, is going to talk about that. But there's a lot of stuff happening, obviously, in the hemp world. And I know there's some people here that are part of the industry that have been farming and harvesting, and market is developing, and we're excited to be part of it, and we hope to have several more of these events forthcoming, and as information is made available to us. But Savannah Halleaux is here. She's a USDA veteran, Michigan farm business, and she's going to discuss newly released federal guidelines. So the other speakers tonight, if you don't know from our flyer, involved Joel Malinsky, who's going to be speaking about some of the influences of the hemp industry, and I think he's got a special topic involving Hempcrete a little bit. As we mentioned, our representative is not appearing tonight. Joe Brown will be here a little later. Another speaker from the past, Roman Viscosil, will be here. He's will be speaking about Hempcrete as well and his adventures in hemp. Justin will be speaking, is that right? Justin from Advanced Nutrients. We're glad to have him back and sponsoring. Representative Jewel Jones will be here, is that right? And he's, of course, the youngest Michigan House representative. He's an Army Reserve officer training, and from the University of Michigan, Dearborn, and he's going to talk about a little bit the expungement topic. And Steve Braddock from Braddock Lighting will speak about the sustainable and energy efficient lighting solutions, his local Royal Oak business. Dale Hermiller, Kraft Hemp Company, will talk about his new business. As I mentioned, Savannah, we're glad to have her, and we'll get an outline of the guidelines for the hemp industry, at least the draft rules as they stand right now. We have talked about in the past some of the important, I think, principles that, as an organization we should try to think about, talk about, and not let go unnoticed for the rule makers, and those are just the general principles associated with the right to farm and the protections of other farmers, and not having any lack of protections for hemp farmers or people within the hemp industry. And there were some concerns, I think, early on. I understood, we know that the way that the state was testing the hemp originally began with an announcement that as long as you had a state-certified tester to perform the test, that would be sufficient in order for your crop to be deemed hemp and be able to harvest it. And then I understand that the state of Michigan decided they wanted to corner the market on this and said, we're the only ones that can test hemp. And I had some concerns about this. I don't know how many horror stories there are. I think most people made it to the end of the line, and maybe people can tell me otherwise if they know. But I don't know that the state of Michigan has had any history or experience of testing hemp, or even being able to specify an amount of THC ever. They've always been able to detect it by bad procedures, and they've done it for a long time, a lot of times over and over again, spent a lot of money on it, but specifying an exact amount of THC has never been a forte of theirs. And but I think it's important, that it's obviously a completely different evaluation of all this, because it's been removed from the controlled substance. We're not talking about an illegal, illicit substance anymore by federal definition. But I still think it's important as this industry moves forward and the rule makers are regulating and creating more rules that are going to impact the economy of hemp and the licensing process and businesses being able to function and operate. We need to stay on them and be vocal and be organized as a group and be able to respond when is needed, and certainly we want to be at the table as stakeholders when those things are happening. So I want to thank everyone for coming in. I hope our speakers inspire you and keep you interested in your participation with our group. Thank you very much. First up will be Joel Malinsky. Joel, you ready?
I guess so.
Well, time.
I really didn't anticipate that I would be first, but I first have to ask this question. Is Roman here in the room yet? No?
He's on route.
He's en route. I certainly hope so, because he is really the here and now when it comes to Hempcrete. Now let me just see. Of course, you all know. By the way, I want to thank Michael and Komorn Law for doing these events. The opportunity for people to create a catalyst for exchange and speak with each other. You never know who's in the room, and you never know what synergy might be here to do something that hasn't been done before. And certainly in the area of hemp, I just came from the Hemp Industries Association conference in North Carolina, and there's a lot of need to organize and consolidate leaderships around the states to challenge a lot of these regulations that have immediately filled the void of what was once illegal. It still is now going to be quite an obstacle course to be enterprising. So groups like Komorn Law are great to know about, because they are certainly crusaders. So enough of that. Certainly our host needs to be recognized. So you should also know that Mercury is retrograde. So anything that can happen that will make this fail will happen. So let's just begin. My presentation is the art of industrialization. And this right here is an early 1900s oil painting by an artist called, I guess you could call him Alberto Cagnoni, except for it's truly an oil painting of masterful technique. However, it's a architectural drawing of the Rouge, as we will well know in the city of Detroit, that Ford Motor Company created the Rouge plant, which was a remarkable feat in industrial art and industry. And this is actually a photograph. And the most interesting thing about this design of 2,000 acres is it ended up bringing together in one place a total supply chain for making automobiles. You had raw materials coming up the river in the form of coal. They would actually take that coal and change it into steel. They had all the factors and forms and intelligence on site to have coal come in off the river and have cars come out the other end. So that design of integrated supply chain in one site is an amazing feat of creativity, artistry, innovation, entrepreneurship, and such integration of supply chain would really be a great thing in hemp, because I know a lot of you people are wondering who's going to buy my stuff, or who's, it's really quite a challenge. The interesting thing at the same time that that plant was being built, this was the $10 bill, which was, came online in 1909 and lasted for, not many years. And what's interesting about it is on one side you have a hemp farmer, horse-drawn, harvesting hemp the old-fashioned way, and the other side pretty much something that looked a lot like the Rouge plant. So, but interestingly enough, in the 30s, that whole practice of enterprise of the worker and agriculture and industry, that went away off the $10 bill and was replaced by the U.S. Treasury building, and that's the same bill and back of the bill that we have now. And it's kind of interesting, we shifted from working and creativity and engineering and growing, and we changed all of that to financial prowess, not the hands and hearts and minds of workers. And instead, what I fashioned that was the beginning of the art of the deal and deal makers, which I think can be extrapolated. The art of the deal is the art of learning how to steal if you're the deal maker. And I don't mean like metal steel. So in the case of hemp, it was just in the 30s that the crisis of what is the crop we're now coming to know and love was propagandized by those who had a vested interest in seeing it curtailed. You had petrochemical companies now figuring out that they can make fiber out of petrochemicals. You also had newspaper publishers, and you had lumber barons who recognized hemp coming online would end up stealing a lot of that paper business, so they decided to suppress it. And the word went out through the industrialized world, back to that earlier $10 bill, and there were no longer the innovations going into improving the way we would harvest and process hemp back in the 30s. So after you got industry to turn their nose up at hemp, they then started working on the general public and getting people to equate hemp with marijuana, and like Dow Chemical came out with reefer madness, and that all led to making hemp illegal. And now here we have the 2018 Farm Bill, and hemp is now legal again, which is great. But why is hemping so hard? I have a friend over here, Adam. He ended up like jumping right in, full tilt, started growing hemp, and the greatest expression I heard from him is, hemping's not easy. And it's not. And why is it not? Because we don't know what we don't know. It's kind of like we've had 90 years of this whole craft and science and opportunity of industrialization totally removed from our ability, and seed stock as well. I don't know how many growers wondered what they bought on the internet or from a trusted source and whatever actually happened to that. But what is hemp, and what is hemp to us, and what could hemp be to everybody? I really put it in like 4 categories: food, clothing, shelter, and wellness. I mean, here you have this one plant that pretty much could cover the broad scope of humankind. No wonder they put it down and took it away from us for 90 years. But they did a good job, with all the plastics they put in fiber. I think we couldn't eat plastic, but I think fiber is certainly in our food chain in the form of plastic, which is really a shame. But I'm going to speak to you tonight pretty much about shelter. because that's the only narrow path I can go, because there's so much you can do with hemp. So with regards to shelter, I'm going to talk about Hempcrete. And has Roman come in yet? Is it?
Right here.
Thank goodness Roman is come in on Hempcrete. So we're lucky that he's here. So this is where Hempcrete starts. And this is one form of Hempcrete in a design. Okay, this is called Hempcrete block.
To my awareness, the biofiber. And these blocks caught their attention because they outperformed every other exterior wall alternative that we saw.
Just biofiber construction is that the building itself becomes carbon negative into the line that's within the block and actually makes the building stronger over time.
We emit a lot of CO2 with concrete. This project here, Arnold's house, captures approximately 30 tons of CO2 that we pull out of the air. And we are carbon negative in place, whereas conventional construction is carbon positive by a large margin. There's a better way to build. This is a natural product. It comes from the field, and we use a cold process to make it. The lifespan of concrete is approximately 65 years above grade. What happens there is the concrete dehydrates, so there's no water left in it. And so when it has no water, it has no flexural strength. And so once it cracks, that's the end of the life of concrete. The hemp absorbs so much CO2, and then after we put it in place and build, it takes 100 years for it to reach its full maturity, and that's how long it absorbs CO2 for. The lime does not set up with heat like concrete or additives. It only sets up from absorbing CO2.
The very nature of the building product is that we are using organic compounds throughout. Compared to conventional houses, the toxicity within this residence would be just a fraction of what we would see in conventional houses. The nature of the fact that we have a metal roof and we have just biofiber walls means that basically this building would not burn. If we had wildfires run through this area, this building is likely to be fully standing without any consequences.
So the most interesting thing that I've learned about hemp and Hempcrete is the fact that it's negative carbon construction. I mean, we're trying desperately to lower carbon footprint and getting to zero carbon as far as construction materials, and there are probably people in the room here who are involved with construction and know that there are materials that you can use, but Hempcrete actually puts it at a negative carbon. You're actually drawing carbon out of the atmosphere, and actually, given our current problem with global warming, I mean, it's amazing to me that there's actually potentially a solution to sequester carbon, and probably hemp growing in large fields probably creates a whole lot of oxygen as well. So there's something to be said for hemp beyond food, clothing, what was the other one? Oh, shelter and wellness. It might actually be an amazing cure for global warming. So let's see if this advances. Okay, let's go. Come on. Okay, you see, this is an important slide. It doesn't want to go. So anyway, what I'm proposing, it's been 100 years since we created this industrial paradigm of bringing in coal from the river, making cars. I mean, it's just like a recursive factory of continuation of throwing carbon into our environment. And if hemp is actually a way to reverse that, I got an idea. The idea, instead of bringing it off the river with raw materials, I'm suggesting we end up growing hemp on land, harvesting it, processing it, creating the raw material in the form of hurd, trucking it to a totally new design of plant that uses only energy efficient concepts and materials, and then we put the finished product on barges in the Great Lakes chain that we have and distribute it via the Great Lakes. And those are all the ports along the Great Lakes, and any number of those cities all the way into Canada would be ample markets for creating hempcrete housing. So that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm hearing. Anybody interested in this idea? That's what I'm interested in doing. So just on to say, this guy's nuts, what's he gonna do? He's gonna put things on boats? Well, they've been doing that for a long time. It's, now granted, 1,000-foot tanker, Lake Freighter is not likely going to be our first shipment. That's why the barge and the tug makes a good sense. But just in general, you can see how many trains and how many trucks, and basically when you get down to 607 miles and 1 ton of cargo, you're just spending 1 gallon of fuel. So there's really some remarkable efficiency in Great Lakes shipping. But the first thing we have to do, the first thing is we got to figure out how to grow successfully. How many people are growing here successfully? Well, one person, okay, good, we're growing. Okay, great. Harvesting is happening. And processing of your harvest, is that coming along smooth, no problem there? And of course, packaging it as raw materials, and of course, finding an immediate market to truck it to where it's going to a manufacturer. This is where things get kind of sketchy. And then, of course, distributing it somewhere, and again, those are my ideas of using the great. So this whole idea, we've got to work on this. I think it starts falling off maybe after raw material packaging. So again, we don't know what we don't know, but what I do know, when it comes to growing hemp for Hempcrete, is that for the process of the Hempcrete block that you saw, which is a manufacturing effort, it's like scaled up. They need 5,000 acres a year of quality hemp to be able to fulfill the requirement of doing 1 production run in that factory. And of course, ideally, you'd want to end up having 3 production runs for economy of scale. And so that means it needs 15,000 acres of fiber-based hemp. So what we're growing in Michigan, to the best of my knowledge, is not fiber-based hemp. We're growing CBD, which is a totally different looking kind of plant. We need to be growing fiber that looks like this, thick at the base, tall in height, as tall as it can possibly be. Of course, then figuring out how to harvest this is going to be a new act of ingenuity. And this is the raw straw, as it would be called, that then needs to be processed into this size herd as the raw material that would go into the plant. So when can I order and build my house out of Hempcrete block in Michigan? I mean, you saw that. You go, where do I sign? I want to do this now. Well, we got this part of the process, and according to the guys who are engineering this application, and they check out states all over the country, they say it's going to be 2 years. And then to look at doing the operations and building the plant, that's probably going to be 3 years. So if you want to build a house today, the great news that I have to offer is Roman is in the audience, and Roman's going to be speaking, and he can help you build a hemp house today, not with hemp block, but with the techniques and methodologies that are very tried and true. So back to the art of industrialization in the city of Detroit. We're Detroiters. We're remarkable people. We do incredible things. We're artists. We're engineers. We're innovators. We actually created the single passenger vehicle, which is probably the most complex consumer product known to man. Oh no. Yes, I'm proposing that we make Hempcrete monoliths. It's too early to do that great big manufacturing thing, but we can now do Hempcrete monoliths. And I'm proposing that we do them as art and science installations in whatever cities appear to be interested in doing hempcrete construction, because it's new construction. There's no saying what the building department is going to say about you coming up to them and saying, I want to build a hempcrete house. So what I'm proposing is we start to look at finding those cities who want to end up supporting zero carbon construction and start working with arts councils to put up these monoliths. And because the testing that we're going to have to prove for these municipalities that this hempcrete stuff is viable will still need to go on. They're still doing that in the Canadian company. They just finished 1 full year of that house that you saw in the video. And they're going to continue to need to do that testing as the different climates occur. So what I'm proposing is that we, people in this room, is there anybody here who's an environmental building person? Probably. Anybody here who, environmental building people, okay. Is there anybody here who's a part of municipal arts councils or part of city buildings? And okay, is there anybody here who can do fundraising? Because I'll tell you, the cost of building that structure is probably going to be half the price of doing all of the sensors to put into that structure that will end up making this little application work. As you go and you put your cell phone over there, grab an image, and you can actually look at the active occurring climatological conditions outside the hemp structure, as well as what the interior space will be, as well as how much moisture is collecting. And the whole idea is to make this totally a self-sufficient, self-contained hempcrete environment. So that's what I'm proposing. That's what I'd like to do. And I thank you very much. That is my presentation. Who's next?
Great stuff, Joel, great stuff.
Thank you, Jesse. I just want to stretch people's minds a little bit. I mean, this is not going to happen overnight.
You're right,
But
and
if
that,
you go to your building department and say you want to build a hemp house, they're going to look at you funny.
for sure. And I think that supply chain topic is very important. I think through the experience we've had this year in the state of Michigan, the supply chain all the way out to the market has been jammed up in some regards and in some aspects. Now first, I'd like to call Dale Hermiller on up to talk about the Craft Hemp Company, if he would. Dale, come on up here.
Thank you, Jesse.
Let's give you a couple of minutes to talk about the new company. Thank you so much again, and thanks for coming.
Well, I'm not here selling anything tonight. I actually was at the first meeting in Lansing back in March and got really excited and started learning as much as I could about this industry. We created a Facebook page called Michigan Hemp Cooperative, and in the truest sense of the word, we've been trying to help each other through this year's harvest, especially when it came to the whole idea around testing and how do you make sure that you're ready for the MDARD test. And I will tell you this, that there's people in this room and people that we've met, like Joe Brown. I've learned so much from Joe and Christy. I mean, there's so many great pioneers in this industry. What I'm really looking to do is I want to start a co-op where we can, as farmers, put together a huge processing facility, because as far as I can study this, there's probably 12 million tons of pounds of biomass in Michigan today, and I think there's only room for about 4 million pounds of extraction capacity. So by that, I'm seeing a lot of smaller farmers that have hemp in their barns and no place to go with it. So I don't have the solution, but I'm going to go down fighting, trying to put additional capacity in place everywhere we can. In our case, we do have a very large facility in Jackson that we will be adding extraction equipment. Our plan is to build that facility into one of the largest, at least in south central Michigan. So if there's any smaller farmers, or because we're going to be growing into this, so we're looking to be that partner with a smaller farmer that hasn't found a place to have their product or their stored material put into distillate. Because at the end of the day, you really can't monetize this plant, can't sell your hempcrete yet, but you can sell CBD distillate. So I think that's the monetary collateral that we're all looking for, and the ability to take it from, you know, the dry biomass into something that you can monetize is what I want to help with. We're also, the other thing I really am imploring the group, please, let's work together. There's many of us here that are gonna have CBD retail stores and this, that, and the other thing. Please, let's buy local. Let's support each other. There's so much to go around. Let's not be pigs about it. Let's help each other. That's all I gotta say.
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you guys so much at the Craft Hemp Company for being one of our sponsors this evening. I also want to thank the Elevation Station of Ypsilanti for sponsoring our event this evening. Next up, we're going to have Mr. Joe Brown, who we've heard so much about this evening already. Come on up as we prepare for our speaker after that, which will be Mr. Justin Pullen. However, between Mr. Brown and Mr. Pullen, we will take a break. And if anybody has parked directly here in the VFW parking lot, during the break, if we could get you to move across the street to the visitor and guest parking lot, we've been asked to clear out the way for some of the members. So again, thank you very much. And Mr. Joe Brown, thank you very much for getting here, buddy.
Thanks for those kind words, Dale. You know, I was going to show up tonight, and I wanted to talk about our seed to final product company and our USDA facilities and kind of boast a little bit, but unfortunately we had a situation come up in the industry, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit, and I'm going to tell you how we figured this out and how we got here today. So real brief, God, you guys that know me, I love to talk about myself and pat myself on the back, so we're going to try to minimize that tonight. I've been in the business 10 years. The industrial hemp business. In 2009, I was able to get in the hemp business through the back door of the Medical Marijuana Act. That's how I got in the back door. And some of you guys here know me, and you know how that all went down. We won't have time to talk about that. It's a different day, different story. 2014, though, I got a Kentucky 7606 permit, and that's a research permit from the federal government. That allowed me, through the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, to start growing industrial hemp in Kentucky, and so we started doing that, and we requested with the Michigan Department of Agriculture to process Kentucky hemp in Michigan and make industrial hemp products for CBD, and they allowed us to do it. However, we were the only ones they let do it. We know because we had a few friends try to get in the business. We tried to show them how we did it, and they were told there was a moratorium by the former administration. And it's quite unfortunate. It's very hard to legitimize what we were doing CBD and separate it from the marijuana industry without the MDARD supporting us. Kentucky now, they kept moving. So let me not drag on about that. So we got our license. They put the moratorium on there. From 2014 to now, I've had the pleasure to design over 100 different CBD products globally for people like Tommy Chong's company and Olympic gold medalist Ross Robolatti. If you've ever been to Canada and used Ross Robolatti's Ross Gold products, I'm the guy that designed most of those. Very proud of that. I love seeing the Hempcrete. So we have a small farm, and we do research there. And we do variety trials, and we also do Hempcrete experiments. A friend of mine, there's quite a few friends of mine in the marijuana industry that came out and helped us put an initial wall. When I seen your thing there, it's kind of been done, but not on your scale. We built a nice big wall out of Hempcrete, and we had a little cookout when we did it, and we've been testing that wall for the last 5 years now. It's still standing, by the way. So that's another story. Anyways, so now that I've qualified myself, I think, Let's talk about some hard stuff. For some reason, I always get to talk about the hard stuff. And sometimes it doesn't make people happy, but it's things that have to be talked about. So currently, I represent, and I'm the founder of the Medicine Man hemp brand. Some of you here have used my products. You may have ordered them multiple times. And that's shaking her head, she knows. Very high quality, very high end. I also represent the Medicine Food brand. I also am the founder and represent Primo smokable hemp products, which is going to lead me into the next part. Everybody's harvesting. I see people, I'm in the Michigan Hemp Cooperative with Dale and some of the other folks here, and I'm requesting that people, I'm buying, I'm not here to sell you guys anything. I buy hemp. I buy high-end hemp, and we make high-end products out of it, and we have highest quality standards in the country right now, hands down. There's no other company that has the quality standards we have, and I can guarantee it. We requested recently, in the last 4 weeks, for samples from different companies that are selling smokable hemp and food-grade hemp products. Hemp flower, it's for food or smokable. And we're testing this product for cannabinoids, heavy metals, and mycotoxins. And we continuously, for the last 4 to 6 weeks, everything that we're getting sent to us, first of all, hardly anybody tests for mycotoxins. If you have anything over 10,000 CFU per gram in your alleged quote-unquote smokable food-grade hemp flower that you're selling on the market, and it has over 10,000 CFU, that product is hazardous, can cause death with the sick people if they ingest that product. And I took it another step and went out and bought 10 different smokable products sold around Grand Rapids that were flour, and they all tested over 60,000 CFU, and it was an alarming, jarring, jaw-dropping situation. I had to contact our board of directors, who we have former senators in our executive board that I'm on, and advised them. I called Gina from M.Ed and explained it to her. We had a nice 40-minute conversation about this situation. And there's no law currently that in the state of Michigan that protects the consumer, the end user, from this poisonous products that are being introduced to the market. I'm going to tell you that there's people putting profits before the well-being of others. It's still continuing. We saw this in the marijuana industry. I stood at the pulpit like I do now and made complaints then. It wasn't popular then, and I won't be popular now, and that's fine with me. However, if you want to sell your hemp and you want 500 a pound, or you want up to 1,000 a pound, I am your man. I buy hemp for up to 1,000 a pound. You're saying, no way. I only get 200, or I only get 100. How is that? Well, you got to meet the quality specifications is what you got to do. So I'm going to spend the last little part, now that everybody knows we got an epidemic with mycotoxins. I can go on for hours about it. Let's talk about, I'm growing hemp and I want to sell it to Joe Brown. How do I get Joe to buy my hemp and pay me that $1,000? By the way, I need 30 pounds right now, and I have cash. If you need cash, I have it. It's all good. Checks, whatever you need. Can't find it. Been looking for 4 weeks now. Nobody can meet the specs. It's crazy. And if you think you can, man, I got a check for you. All right. I want to talk to you. Okay, so let's just go through it real quick. The seller. Okay, this is Quality Safety Standard Requirements 2019 for Medicine Man Cosmetics, Medicine Man Foods, and Primo smokable hemp products. This is what's required to sell us hemp. Seller must submit a copy of a valid state industrial hemp license and copy of driver's license or valid state business license with a truthful and complete seller's application that we're going to provide for you. See, we want to know who you are, where you grew it. You're going to be accountable. You're not going to push your poison off. We want hemp. We want high quality hemp. We're going to hold you accountable for it. The seller must submit testing forms for each separate batch that is for sale. A batch will list the exact weight and designate a batch number that will correspond with the sample submitted for testing. We're going to make traceability. We're going to make you accountable, and we're going to make it so we can trace every step of the way what's going on with that hemp that you sold us or you're going to sell us, possibly. The seller must submit copies of an approved cannabinoid verification form from a USDA approved laboratory, validating that the THC is 0.3000, not 3.1 or 0.31, not 0.32, 0.30. Dried weight. Everyone will say, oh, we still got a whole year, and the USDA just came out with the regs. Well, that's fine. Go sell your hemp somewhere else. These are the specs. If you want $1,000 a pound, these are the specs you're going to meet. And a list of known cannabinoids. Oh, by the way, third-party testing forms must never be submitted. They will be rejected. So all you folks sending me those third parties on my inbox and Facebook that I'm not getting back to, that's why. Sorry. The directions were real clear on the post I made in the cooperative page. Number 4, seller must submit heavy metal testing that quantifies safe metal levels. You're not testing for metals and you're selling smokable? No thanks, we're all set. Number 5, seller must submit a TYMC. Anybody know what TYMC is? No? Total yeast and mold count. That, you smoke the hemp, that yeast and that mold that's on that hemp, if it's over 10,000 CFU, you're going to get sick. You say, oh, no, we've been smoking that Mexican stuff for years. That's what one guy tells me. I say, yeah, I know. I used to deal with that. I understand that market. It was garbage then, it's garbage now. This is a safe, regulated industry, and we don't want to bring fear to the customer base, to the public. So why would we allow a product that's supposed to be healthy? Remember, we're here because it's healthy, right? CBD is healthy. You buy it under the pretense that you're going to receive a health benefit from CBD. That's why you buy it. There's a value there. That's why you pay the extra money, but you're not paying for mold and yeast. Think about this, folks. This is common sense. I mean, it's just shake my head at this stuff. The total yeast and mold count verification form that quantifies the batch number has no greater than 10,000 CFU. So I'll tell you something interesting. One of our fields tested over 60,008 CFU. If that smokable hemp flower, because it looks beautiful, smells good, tastes good, I smoked a little bit of it before the testing came in, that was $500,000. But all of a sudden, now that I got the CFU test in, now it's only worth $100,000. You understand the difference between smokable hemp and biomass is really what it is. It's biomass at that point that's trimmed up nice and pretty. It loses value because it's not 10 a gram, it's 10 an ounce. There's that big of a markup on this stuff if you do it right, if you do it correctly, if you follow the procedures. Being the first guy on the block doing all this stuff, nobody was there to tell us, you got to do it like this, or you got to do it like that, and always keep the consumer's safety first. We had to self-police. We had to do it ourselves. We had to put people's well-being before the profits. Let me continue. I'm sorry. A seller agrees to submit a sample of each separate batch, no less than 28 grams of food-grade smokable hemp flower for third-party independent analytical testing to verify all the samples that the seller submitted. So you're going to submit all the testing. We're going to take your test results. I'm going to take an ounce, 2 minutes. I'm going to take an ounce. I'm going to send it out and verify that you're not BSing me and sending me bullshit test results. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to double check you. Seller must agree that all independent third-party testing conducted by our corporation is the only data considered at the time of sale. Our data matters, yours don't. If your tests come up bogue, sorry, we're not buying your product. Seller agrees that after the sale of hemp batch number that was purchased by our corporation, we will conduct one last third-party test for cannabinoids, heavy metals, mycotoxin, yeast, and mold. In the event that the batch number fails the required testing, then the seller agrees to 100% refund me back my 10% deposit on your purchase, 100% of the testing that we conducted, and any other cost. You're going to pay me back all that money because you sent me a bunch of garbage and you tried to pull one and I'm not buying it and I want my money back for everything. And you're going to sign that contract before we even start the whole process. Seller and buyer agree that all testing submitted and completed no later than 14 days of receiving a batch number and 10% of the batches. In short, that means we give you a deposit, and 14 days later, we either reject your stuff and send it back to you, or you get a check put in your bank account 14 days later for that purchase. And lastly, the seller and buyer agree that the hemp batches will remain in quarantine at buyer's facility and labeled unusable in food-safe containers with resealable tops for independent third-party testing. So you send us it, we've given you the deposit, we take samples out of the food-grade containers, and then we take a safety seal and put it back around so you know that we didn't contaminate your stuff. We tested it as soon as it came in, we resealed your stuff back up, and now we wait for the test results. These are some pretty tough specifications. We can meet them. We'll have product for sale this year. We'll have all our tests posted on our website, so it can be done. Somebody said it's a lot of money to test everything. It really isn't. I mean, it's part of doing business. You can't put people's safety above people's health. With all that being said, my name's Joe Brown, and we pay between $500 and $1,000 for food-grade smokable hemp flower in the state of Michigan or throughout the country. But you must meet our specifications and follow our contract. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thanks, man, great stuff, Joe. Really appreciate you coming down today. Again, I want to thank our sponsors tonight, the Elevation Station, Ypsilanti, Komorn Law, and especially Braddock Enterprises, since Stephen is not able to make it tonight. Please pray for him or keep him in your thoughts as he was in an accident on his way here from Grand Rapids. Now at this time, we'd like to call for a break so that we're staying kind of close to the schedule. After the break, we'll have Mr. Justin Pullen, followed by Mr. Roman Viscoso. In the meantime, if you'd like to see our good friend Chris for a drink, a beverage, to support the VFW, please do so, as a portion of our proceeds raised tonight will go towards the VFW here in Royal Oak at the Acorn Post. So please tip your waitresses, your bartenders, and feel free to make a donation. In the meantime, smoke them if you got them. Outside, please. Yes. Yes. Smoking area out to the back. Smoking area out to the back. Hey, Dan. Hey, Dan.